Well, we're starting off here in the nation's capital this morning. We have Mr. Igho Akeregha with us, who is a former bureau chief at The Guardian, is a bureau chief this Nigeria, and a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Joins us for the newspaper review this morning. It's good to have you and to see you in person.
Yeah, good morning.
Well, let's start off with The Guardian.
I haven't seen your face physically, but I'm doing that now.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, I mean, quite a lot on the front pages. And I'll start with The Guardian, which you're familiar with. And this is how The Guardian leads this morning. Jonathan absent as APC screens presidential aspirant. So it looks like, you know, let me just take the writers first. Let me not rush into it. Screening panel asked to disqualify Tinubu over Chicago affair. Supporters in rousing welcome for Tinubu at venue. Bakare Onenye pledged to abide by party position. Fallout of Atiku's emergence. APC chieftains weigh Oshimbajo others' chances. Atiku intensifies reconciliation with Wike. Other stakeholders. Obi picks Labour Party's presidential ticket. So The Guardian may have led with the APC screening, but clearly takes a look at what's going on in other parties, PDP and Labour Party. I'm just wondering, off the back of the primaries we saw over the weekend, and now what we're seeing, the screening in the APC, what we saw in Labour Party as well, as a journalist, how are you soaking all of this in?
Well, these are interesting times for Nigeria as a country, and it would appear as if we are going through a comic circus, you know.
Comic circus?
Yeah.
Why?
It doesn't appear as if the political class, the politicians themselves, for them, it's business as usual. The usual horse trading, backstabbing, betrayals, and all of that. That's just what we can see. But as journalists, we are to interrogate all of the conversations around the same individuals. That is really what worries me. If we are talking about moving our nation forward away from the past, trying to break from what used to be the normal, the normal as it were, I'm very worried. You could just see that the APC and the PDP still remains the dominant political parties. And if some of the individuals that whose names are being bandied around, who have also picked the expression of interest from and are actually running for the #1 position, the presidency, a couple of them have not been consistent ideologically. They are very politically flirtatious. They move around the political parties once they can't get their what they want from the parties, then they just move on.
You know,
so for me, I'm worried about that.
I mean, we hear a lot that really the parties don't have any distinct ideology. In fact, some go as far as saying APC and PDP, they're one and the same. So is it like they don't have an ideology, or essentially they just want the ticket anyway, and seeing that looks like both divides are the same, they just cross anyhow?
If the political parties don't have ideology, what about the individuals? What do they believe in? Do they really believe in Nigeria? Do they believe in the Nigeria project? And all that. Look at what happened at the PDP primaries, the dollarization, not even nairalization as it were. So it would appear as if the naira is no longer of significant value. So it is the dollar, and it is so much of dollar. It's the dollar reign. Well, a lot of the delegates. For me, that's discouraging. And as journalists who I was at the venue, though I didn't get in, I have my reporters in there. And
did they tell you they saw the dollars? You did see the dollars?
They will never see the dollars.
That's the interesting part.
How does it fly around then? How do they do these things?
Nobody sees the dollar. Huh? No, they have a way. The politicians have a way of always. Politicians have a way of always doing these things, you know, and they are like thieves at night. They have a way of pushing the monies around, and at the end of the day, nobody gets to see anything. But a lot goes on behind the scene. And that's what really plays out. Eventually, that's what plays out. Just when you see the outcome, that's what plays out.
You know what I noticed during that convention was just right after the voting, the delegates were leaving. And I was thinking, I thought you came here to vote and at least see the outcome of your voting, but they were trooping out. And I don't know, for me, it was just...
They were trooping out to enjoy their loot.
All right, you heard that.
It's sad, really. It's sad. You know, it's sad.
It's really a couple of other stories on the front page. You see, Nigeria records 21 fresh cases of monkeypox, 1 death. It's a page 4 read, and I know that the NCDC has been given some advisory even before it became a major thing, been advising how people should approach this.
Interestingly, I read the report yesterday, right. I think in one of the, where Russia was accusing the United States that the U.S. has 3 labs in Nigeria where they probably spewed this monkeypox out. I mean, that is, it's funny. I read that and I just laughed. I said they shouldn't bring us into this.
We're okay where we are, and we're handling it quite well, I should say, compared to what we're seeing across. So just needs to be more careful. Concerns as expatriate crew gob 1.62 billion naira monthly flying politicians. At page 6 read, a couple of pictures on the front page, but you know what? Let's leave it there for the Guardian.
Daily Trust has following suit in terms of the lead headline there. APC presidential screening. Oyegun-led committee grills Tinubu, Umahi, Amechi, Badaru, others. Oshibajo, Lawan, Fayemi, others appear today. Atiku's emergence, not a threat to us. That's according to Bakari. Page 4 will give you details. They also have pictures to buttress it. But I'm curious, what do you think happens in the screening, though? Is it the closest we get to an interview for the presidential aspirants?
Well, the screening would appear to, it takes the semblance of some kind of interviews where the politicians themselves within the party tries to look at who best. Really, I don't think it is screening. What they simply look at is to try to aggregate the interest of the party, who best can serve the collective interest. When you get in there, get the ticket, how are you going to fix these things, arrange these individuals into various positions? That's what the screening is about, really, for me. And the individuals that emerge from the screening process eventually are those that have been able to build structures, nurture the structures, service the structure. And at the end of the day, you do not expect that somebody whose bills have been paid over the years and who finds himself as a member of the screening committee is going to move against the benefactor. That is really a key issue in Nigerian politics, the issue of godfatherism. Somebody appointed members of the screening committee who influence how are they appointed. Why don't they allow party members to elect members of the screening committee? But of course, the ESCO of the party, the national ESCO of the party, will appoint members of the screening committee. As somebody encouraged or sponsored the emergence of members of ESCOs of the political party. So if you look at it, these are the intrigues. It's an intricate web that is sometimes difficult to understand. But at the end of the day, the question that we should be asking ourselves, does this serve the overall interest of Nigerians? Well,
the party is conducting its own screening, and I imagine that if this is the closest they get to an interview, you know, is it this screening committee that should be interviewing them, or the delegates who's going to be voting for them? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's, but hey, I mean, we're not privy to the questions being asked at a screening, or whether it's just to ensure that all their documents are really their documents, I don't know. You also find this very important story on the front page. Abuja Kaduna train attackers issue fresh threat as children found. Page 6 will give details. Do not forget that there had been a threat before now, a 7-day ultimatum, more or less, with demands attached to it. We did hear yesterday that that ultimatum had now been rescinded, but looks like a fresh one has come out. What do we make of these negotiations? They're taking way too long to get the people who were kidnapped on this Abuja-Kaduna train attack to be released.
Well, I'm not aware there's any negotiation. The federal government has taken a position that they will not negotiate with terrorists. The Kaduna state government under Governor El-Rufai is very clear that he was not going to have any business with terrorists. I think that is really what has kept the captives there. But if you are not negotiating, what else is the government doing? The Constitution is very clear. The purpose of government is for the security and welfare of citizens. So if your citizens are held in captivity and the government is just, I think the business for the politicians now is how they can get to office in 2023. Nobody really bothers about anyone in captivity. So for me, for any Nigerian who is listening to us this morning, people should be very careful. If you find yourself in the wrong corner of any space within Nigeria, you are held by these so-called bandits.
Should we let that be? we? I mean, don't we have a duty to call government to its primary responsibility?
Of course we do, but do we have a government that is really listening? Do we need to remind government of its responsibilities? They pick their salaries at the end of the month from taxpayers' money. So it is a fundamental responsibility by the government to ensure that once one American citizen was taken, I think to somewhere in yes, and the U.S. arranged a special seals to pick him up right from our soil. That's the way it should be. Responsible governments and countries do that every time. But here we've gotten used to the number. Sometimes when people are kidnapped, the question is, how many are there this time? You know, the government is even talking about reopening the Abuja-Kaduna rail track when you have not been able to secure the release of those who paid you to take them to Kaduna. So this is just the tragedy of the country, and it's sad. And I would have thought that even the politicians that are angling to take office in 2023 should be addressing the issues. And for the media, these are the issues that we should be confronting them with. How are you going to deal with the issues of security? It's not this plastic approach to it. Oh, I will deal with security, I will fix the economy. No, we need to ask deeper issues now. The specifics, what will you do? How are you going to, if people are taking hostage, how will you rescue them? These are issues. What would be your policy on hostage taking and ransom payment and all of that? These are issues that we should be interrogating.
Well, we have a number of other stories on the front page of Daily Trust. They also remind us that today is World Tobacco Day. Smoking kills 29,000 Nigerians annually. They have that on the front page. But let's leave it there for the paper.
All right, from here, we've got New Telegraph, the lead story here. PDP presidential primary, ex-NSA, to present Atiku before IBB, ascribed to a source. They got a host of writers. The first reads, Bauchi Governor Mohammed in trouble for refusing to step down. Security agencies to probe alleged Northern delegates lists manipulation. Fear heightens over possible Tinubu powerful PDP presidential aspirant alliance. Ex-VP meets Wike. Middle Belt Forum kicks against PDP's candidate. Well, Igho, this seems to point to some of the things going on behind the scenes that actually shape what we see, which unfortunately many, don't get to see a lot of those hands behind the scene, as it were. What would your impression be about this particular headline, especially when you remember, I think the former head of state has spoken about the characteristics of the kind of person who should lead this country. And remember, several persons who indicated interest to vie for that #1 position visited him. And many of them said they gave them their nod. So what will become of this one now?
Well, Chamberlain is interesting. Former military head of state, General Ibrahim Babangida, left power 1985 or thereabout. And since then, people still go to him in his Niger State castle, as it were. The man, and he has been active politically, really. If you look at what the politicians have done and the current political tempo, people visiting him and his counseling, he's been able to give some kind of recipe about what the Nigerian leader should be going forward in 2023. And nobody expects IBB not to endorse anyone. They come and they go. But I'm sure he has his preference amongst all of the individuals that are coming to him. So be that as it may, we are where we are now. We are to choose between these individuals that are coming up. Tinubu is coming up strong. Atiku has emerged as the PDP candidate. Now he's looking for a vice president, a running mate, a vice president. And of course, the APC has been playing the ostrich for a while. Now the PDP has been taking the lead. Now we wait for the APC to come out with their candidate. And then from there, Nigerians can begin to ask the questions, interrogate the individuals. But what is important in all of this, whether we like it or not, 2023 is a defining moment for this country. It will not be enough for any of the candidates to just come up to tell Nigerians that I will do this, I will do this, and I will do that. Nigerians will be interested in what you have done in the past, if any of them has held political office,
so
how they discharge those responsibilities. If there's anyone that has a corruption case hanging around him or her, I'm sure that will also be of interest to Nigerians. And how these individuals will fix the economy, create employment, deal with ASU, the perennial ASU strike, and of course, infrastructural deficit across the country. There's a whole lot of issues. Nigeria is at the precipice at the moment, and of course, the issue of the deep divide. You know, our fault line have been so deep in now.
Let me jump in, because we've still got some grounds to cover. New Telegraph usually publish this study at the bottom strip of the paper, but this one, this time, says dancing can reduce anxiety, manage chronic pain, ascribed to a particular study. So people need to pay attention, because it's not just about politics. There's several other things going on in society which we should keep our tabs on. But speak to this one particularly. It's at the top of this nameplate here. Indians dump $1.60 billion substandard drug in Nigeria. And then we understand meeting scheduled to forestall diplomatic row. So there's several questions about this one. And by the way, let me just give you this back info, because part of the story said that this was in Nigerian market in the last 2 years, Igho.
That's worrisome. We have the border control and border management officials at the seaports, at the airports. How did these drugs get into Nigeria? That is the issue. That is it. We shouldn't be blaming the Indians. Any country that offers herself as a vulnerable entity, of course, other countries will take advantage of you. With this kind of story, this is a big story that is reported by the New Telegraph this morning. If it is found to be true, of course, beyond the diplomatic row, I also expect that heads will be rolling before the end of today. But what I've seen in this government is that heads do not roll, except it has become so intolerable. You've been pushed to the wall, perhaps. And so it is, somebody just gets fired. But this is really sad. I can imagine that thousands of these drugs would have found its way to the Nigerian market, and eventually many Nigerians would have consumed these drugs. So are the Indians so heartless, so heartless that they will bring substandard drugs to Nigerians? Is it that Nigerians have become experimental guinea pigs, that the Indians just felt that, well, the drugs that they don't want to waste the drugs? $1 billion, over $1 billion, according to that report. That is massive. All right. It's huge.
Let's move on to the next.
It is something of interest, and I think...
yes, indeed. It would make a good talking point in the near future. Perhaps we could find out from the Customs Service if it's a matter of capacity for enforcement and all of that. But it's a good story. From there, let's move on to the Nigerian Tribune this morning, and it also leads with politics. Tinubu, Amechi, Amosun, Bakari face APC screening. And it has just one rider. Adamu inaugurates Oyegun's 7-man panel amidst power tussle in party. You'll find that big story on page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune. Also, by the left-hand corner, there's a political story. Of course, one of the big talking points from yesterday, Peter Obi emerges Labour Party presidential candidate. There are a lot of activities, political activities from yesterday, one of which is what I want you to talk about, Mr. Igho. I almost scuttled PDP presidential primary. That's coming from the Rivers governor and aspirant in the PDP race, Wike. The riders provide more insight, accuses southern governors of betrayal. Atiku visits Wike, Saraki, Ayim. Now, even though following the PDP presidential primary, what we saw was a convivial atmosphere amongst the aspirants. They were all gallant in victory. But the Rivers State governor couldn't quite hide his reservation, and when he returned to Rivers, he said quite a lot about what happened, about how a southern governor betrayed him, and how southern leaders pay lip service to, the agitation for a presidency from the south, the zoning subject. What are the lessons that you think that Nigeria should be taken away from the outcome of the PDP presidential primary?
Well, for me, I sympathize with Wike this morning. He came out very strong. He is a man who tries to walk the talk. Apparently, he didn't read his fellow governors very well. The Middle Belt Forum, the Southern Governors Forum, Southeast, for all kinds of forums in the South, they all came up to say that by next year, once President Muhammadu Buhari would have finished with his 8 years term, it must be the underlining word, there must be the turn of the South to produce the next president. Wike took that for granted and started running with that message. But unknown to him, the other leaders in the South perhaps were also negotiating their own political future. Some were promised the vice presidential slots, and they fell for that. And of course, perhaps Wike didn't read deeply enough into the body languages of his fellow governors. But what played out is very clear. The North, democracy is a game of numbers. The North were able to come up with their strategy. At the last moment, the Sokoto state governor pulled the last joker, and that himself is supposed to be an ally of Wike. I remember Wike supported him so much during the Port Harcourt PDP convention, whether in terms of resources, physical support, mobilization. But at the end of the day, Tambuwa just pulled the rug. And so that is the way politics goes. There are no permanent friends, but permanent interest. It's a lesson for Wike that not all that glitters is gold. He came out strong. He discharged himself very well. He scored good numbers, the delegates. But of course, he lost it. He can also, I think the PDP should not take Wike for granted. I'm sure that is why they have visited him now. He is still capable of disrupting, the order within the political party. They do
but
take
of course, we all know what he has already said about
Wike,
that one. Just a moment,
that I know is somebody who doesn't talk
just 1 second, Mr. Akeregha.
Once he talks.
Yeah, we already know what he has said about that one. And just as you said, he walks his talk. The Vanguard newspaper, right quick, and he is the one on the front page of that paper. PDP ticket. Fellow Southern governors betrayed us. Ascribed to the governor of Rivers State, a host of riders right there. Beyond the pictures, under the pictures on the front page of his visit, the visit of former vice president and presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, APC primary, Tinubu, Wajuba, Badaru, Ohanenye, Bakare, Borofis screened. Find that story on page 8 of the paper this morning. Right above the nameplate, petrol subsidy could hit 6 trillion naira by year end. That's ascribed to IMF. Is that something to be wary of?
Well, I will just take the response from the last issue. Petrol subsidy has been a biting issue. As we speak in Abuja, there's fuel scarcity. You can't just drive into any of the filling stations and fill your tank. So now they are saying that it is going to hit about 6 trillion at the end of the year. That is attributable to the IMF. Well, Nigerians have said that there's no subsidy anywhere, that apparently there's a cartel within the oil and gas sector that is simply benefiting. It is all there for the government to deal with. We've elected them, let them deal with it, let them deal with the issue. Nigerians are tired of these excuses, putting our monies into a so-called abstract subsidy that nobody can put his or her hand on. It's that sad. On the APC screening, Nigerians wait to see who emerges as the APC candidate.
Yeah, well, so many other issues. Well, it definitely is very interesting. A quick one right now, just a quick.
Politicking is the major issue that we have. Okay, but we have to anchor at that point. Ayo, forgive me. I mean, there's so much we can talk about on the front page. Not forgetting Mr. and Mrs. I know. I probably will get a query for that one. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Igho Akeregha, former Abuja Bureau Chief, The Guardian, also Bureau Chief, This Nigerian, member, Nigerian Guild of Editors. Thank you for your thoughts on the program this morning.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's take a quick break. You've seen some of the issues, and we'll be getting right into them in a moment. Stay with us.